Professor Krelvan stood at the center of the amphitheater, his 7 eyes rotating independently to scan the assembled students from 43 different species. The Galactic Academy's xenobiology course was, in his humble opinion, the most important class any young spacefarer could take. After all, understanding what could kill you in the vast darkness between stars was rather essential to survival. Today, he began, his vocal sacs inflating with importance, we discussed the rarest and most dangerous classification in our galactic database, Deathworlders. A collective shudder rippled through the assembled students. Even the Thoraxians, who were basically armored tanks with anger issues, seemed to shrink in their seats. There are exactly 3 known Deathworld species in the Galactic Council, Krelvan continued, pulling up a holographic display. The Krathu from Valan 9, the Gormuth from Titan's Edge, and of course my own people, the Zentari. He puffed up slightly. At this, pride was a dangerous thing, but when you came from a world where the rain was acidic and the plants were carnivorous, you earned some bragging rights. These worlds, he gestured dramatically, operate under conditions that would liquefy most of you within mere moments. Gravity 3 times galactic standard. Atmospheric toxicity levels that require military-grade filtration. Predators that hunt in packs with cognitive reasoning abilities. A small creature in the 3rd row, a piffling named Scree, raised one of its tentacles nervously. Professor, what about the rumored 4th Deathworld? Krelvan's eye stalks drooped in what might have been the alien equivalent of an eye roll. Yes. The conspiracy theories. Let me be abundantly clear. There is no 4th Deathworld. The Galactic Survey Corps has mapped 97% of habitable systems. If such a world existed, we would know. He turned back to his display, completely missing the human in the back row slowly raising her hand. Now survival on a Deathworld requires specific evolutionary adaptations. For instance, my species developed redundant organ systems, because frankly you need backups when everything is trying to murder you. The Krathu developed an exoskeleton so dense it can withstand direct plasma fire. The Gormuth, well, they are basically living nightmares, so we don't talk about them much. The human's hand remained raised. Her name was Riley Jackson, though the registration system had mangled it into something approximating Riley Jacksoon, and she'd stopped correcting people after the first week. She was a new transfer student, part of some obscure diplomatic exchange program that nobody seemed to know much about. Krelvan continued, oblivious. The key factor in Deathworld designation is the Lethality Index, a mathematical formula accounting for atmospheric composition, predator density, geological instability, microbial hostility, and approximately 47 other variables. A planet must score above 9.5 to qualify. For reference, the average garden world where most civilized species evolve scores a comfortable 2.3. Valan 9 scores 9.8. My homeworld of Zentara scores 9.6. Titan's Edge, may the stars have mercy, scores 9.9, which is why the Gormuth are terrifying and why we generally let them do whatever they want. Several students nodded knowingly. Nobody argued with the Gormuth. Riley's hand was still up. She'd been holding it there for almost 5 minutes now, and her shoulder was starting to cramp. Sitting next to her, a gelatinous being named Blorp had noticed and was making sympathetic gurgling sounds. The reason Deathworlders are so rare, Krelvan continued, now fully in lecture mode, is because evolution on such planets usually results in extinction. The species either dies out or never achieves sentience, because all resources go toward not dying. Those of us who made it are, without false modesty, exceptional. He paused for effect, his chest plates flaring outward in a display of pride. We 3 species represent the absolute apex of survivability in the known galaxy. There is nothing, and I mean nothing, that evolution could possibly throw at a species that we have not already endured and conquered. Riley cleared her throat. Loudly, Krelvan's eye stalks finally swiveled in her direction. Yes? You in the back, the oddly symmetrical one with the disturbing forward-facing eyes. Do you have a question? Riley stood up slowly, She was wearing her standard academy uniform, modified slightly because human proportions were apparently weird to most species. At 1.8 meters tall, she was actually on the shorter side compared to many of the other students. But something about the way she moved made several nearby aliens instinctively lean away. "Hi, yeah, quick question," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone humans used when they were about to ruin someone's entire day. "You said there are only 3 Deathworld species in the galaxy, right?" "That is correct," Krelvan replied, his tone suggesting this conversation was already boring him. "Ever heard the name Earth?" The silence that followed was the kind of silence usually reserved for moments right before something explodes. Krelvan's 7 eyes blinked in sequence, a sure sign of confusion among Zentari. "Earth? No. I cannot say that I have. Is this some sort of primitive colony world?" Riley's smile could only be described as predatory. "Oh, it's primitive all right. Super primitive. We only figured out space travel about 200 years ago. Practically yesterday by galactic standards. Then it is clearly not relevant to this discussion," Krelvan said dismissively. "Garden worlders discovering space travel is common. We have 17 species achieve it per cycle." Right. Totally," Riley nodded, still smiling that unsettling smile. "Except, here's the thing. When your Galactic Survey Corps showed up in our system about 50 years ago, they took one look at Earth, checked their instruments about 7 times and then immediately classified the planet as off-limits for colonization." Now she had his attention. Krelvan's primary eyes focused directly on her, while his peripheral eyes scanned his datapad frantically. The designation was incompatible with carbon-based life. Riley continued, her voice dripping with amusement. "Which is hilarious, because there were about 8 billion carbon-based life forms living on it at the time." Blorp made a sound like a garbage disposal struggling with a fork. Several other students had gone very still. Krelvan found the file. His face, if you could call it a face, went through several colors in rapid succession. This must be an error. A clerical mistake. The atmospheric oxygen content alone would be toxic to most species. The gravity is listed as 1.0 galactic standard, which is, well, that is quite high for a world that developed complex life. And these predator statistics, they cannot possibly be accurate. "Let me guess," Riley said, walking down the steps toward the center of the amphitheater. Several students scrambled out of her way. "You're looking at the megafauna listings? The big cats, the bears, the crocodilians? These creatures," Krelvan's voice had gone up an octave, "hunt prey larger than themselves. They have bite forces measured in thousands of pressure units. This one, the hippopotamus, it says here it kills more humans annually than any other large animal despite being herbivorous." "Yeah, hippos are jerks," Riley agreed cheerfully. "But honestly, they're not even in the top 10 scariest things on Earth." "Not in the top 10? Krelvan's eye stalks were quivering now. "Nope. You want scary? We've got parasites that eat your brain. Plants that cause pain so intense people have ended themselves rather than endure it. Jellyfish with venom that causes existential dread before cardiac arrest. Spiders that can survive in space. Bacteria that literally eat metal, and don't even get me started on mosquitoes." "Mosquitoes?" Squeeze squeaked from somewhere in the back. "Tiny flying insects that drink your blood and spread diseases," Riley explained. "They've killed more humans throughout history than every war combined. Roughly half of all humans who have ever lived died because of mosquitoes." The amphitheater had gone deathly quiet. Krelvan was scrolling through the Earth file now, his primary eyes growing wider with each passing second. "Your planet has experienced 5 separate mass extinction events." 5. Most worlds get 1, maybe 2 if they're unlucky. You have had 5 apocalypses, and life just, what? Kept going. "Life finds a way," Riley shrugged. "After the dinosaurs got wiped out by an asteroid, it took like 10 million years, but mammals took over. That's where we came from, actually. Speaking of asteroids, we get buzzed by planet killers pretty regularly. Keeps things interesting. Your tectonic plates are still active," Krelvan read, his voice barely a whisper now. "You have supervolcanoes, plural, any one of which could trigger an extinction event. Your magnetic field fluctuates. You are bombarded by solar radiation. Your moon is massive relative to planetary size, causing gravitational stress that creates tidal waves. And yet you have more biodiversity than garden worlds 3 times your size. Well, yeah, Riley said. When everything's trying to kill you all the time, you either evolve fast or die. We just happen to evolve really, really well. She reached the center platform, now standing next to the professor, who had suddenly become very interested in backing away slightly. See, Professor, here's what you're missing. You talk about Deathworlds like they're rare, special cases. But Earth is what happens when a planet doesn't just create difficult conditions, it creates impossible conditions, and then randomizes them constantly. We've got deserts where it does not rain for years, rainforests where it does not stop raining for months, frozen wastelands at the poles, and everything in between. We've got weather patterns that can level cities. We've got ocean currents that regulate global climate. We've got an atmosphere that is 78% nitrogen and 21% oxygen, which, by the way, is a highly reactive gas that causes slow oxidation of nearly everything. Krelvan checked his datapad. The lethality index, it is not calculating properly. The numbers, they keep going up. This cannot be right. It says 11.2. That is impossible. Nothing can score above 10. The scale does not go above 10. Guess you need a bigger scale, Riley said with a grin. But if this is true, Krelvan stammered, then how did your species survive? What evolutionary adaptations do you possess? Redundant organs, armored skin, toxic blood. Riley held up her hand, wiggling her fingers. We've got opposable thumbs, and persistence. Thumbs? Persistence? That is it? Oh, and we sweat. That's pretty neat. You excrete liquid through your skin as a cooling mechanism? Krelvan looked horrified. Yep, means we can run pretty much forever without overheating. We used to hunt by just chasing animals until they died of exhaustion. Took hours sometimes, but hey, we're patient. A student in the front row, a crystalline being whose name was unpronounceable, raised a shimmering appendage. But surely your species must have some weakness, some factor, that limited your dominance on this death world. Riley thought about it for a moment. Well, we're pretty squishy, no armor plating or anything, and we're not the strongest or the fastest. But here's the thing, we're smart, like really smart. Smart enough to look at the apex predators on our world and go, yeah, we could totally make those into pets. You domesticated your predators? Krelvan sounded faint. Dogs used to be wolves. We took the scariest pack hunters on the planet and bred them into companions. Some of them fit in teacups now. We've got cats, which are obligate carnivores with retractable claws and exceptional hunting instincts, and we let them live in our homes. We've domesticated horses, which can kick hard enough to shatter bones. We keep snakes as pets. We swim with sharks for fun. For fun? Squee whimpered. Yeah, we do a lot of dangerous stuff for fun. Climbing mountains, jumping out of aircraft, diving to depths that should crush us, exploring caves, racing vehicles at lethal speeds. We invented entire categories of sports based on what if we made this normal thing way more dangerous. Krelvan sat down heavily, which was impressive given that his species did not normally sit. This explains so much. When your people applied to join the Galactic Academy, there were concerns. Your species seemed, well, reckless, overly curious, unnervingly friendly given your capabilities. Oh, we're super friendly, Riley agreed. That's another survival trait, actually. Humans are pack animals, we work together. We form communities. We create art and music and stories. We domesticated wheat, for crying out loud. We looked at grass and said, what if we could eat that? And then we did. We terraform our own planet constantly, just by existing. We are so adaptable that we live everywhere from the equator to the Arctic Circle. We're in deserts, mountains, islands, tundra, you name it. She paused, her expression becoming more serious. But here's the really important thing, Professor. Yeah, we come from a nightmare planet. Yeah, we're probably scary to a lot of species here, but we didn't survive Earth by being the strongest or the toughest. We survived by being cooperative, by being creative, by looking at impossible situations and finding solutions. The amphitheater was utterly silent now. Every eye, stalk, sensor, and visual organ was focused on the human standing in the center of the room. So when you say there are only 3 Deathworld species in the galaxy, you're not wrong exactly. You're just missing some context. Because humans? We don't think of ourselves as Deathworlders. We just think of ourselves as people. People who happen to come from a planet that is aggressively trying to kill everything on it all the time. And we're fine with that. More than fine actually. We kind of like it. Krelvan's voice was barely a whisper. What is Earth's unofficial designation among your people? Riley's smile returned, bright and genuine. We call it home. But some of us, the poetic ones, we call it the pale blue dot, the cradle of humanity, the world that made us strong enough to reach for the stars. She looked around at the assembled students, making eye contact with as many as she could. Look, I get it. Finding out there's a species from a planet that makes your Deathworld look like a vacation resort is probably unsettling. But we're not here to intimidate anyone. We're here to learn, to share, to be part of this amazing galactic community. We just want to contribute. Contribute what exactly? Asked the crystalline student, though its tone suggested it was not sure it wanted to know the answer. Riley thought about it. Well, humans are pretty good at solving problems, especially problems that seem impossible. We've had a lot of practice with those. We're also pretty good at medicine, since we've been fighting diseases and injuries that would kill most species instantly. Our literature and entertainment are apparently either fascinating or horrifying, depending on who you ask. Oh, and we make really good food. Food is super important to us. Krelvan had recovered slightly, though he still looked shaken. I will need to update my curriculum extensively, and perhaps add a trigger warning. That's probably fair, Riley agreed. As she walked back to her seat, the other students parted like she was emitting some sort of repulsion field. Blorp gurgled something that might have been congratulatory. When she sat down, the gelatinous being oozed slightly closer. So, Blorp burbled, your planet is legitimately terrifying, and your species is apparently unkillable. Pretty much, Riley confirmed. Want to get lunch after this? I hear the cafeteria has that human food you requested. Pizza, I think it was called? Riley grinned. Sure. Fair warning though, human food is sometimes as dangerous as the planet. We eat things that are technically poisonous in small amounts because we like the taste. Capsaicin, for instance. We literally eat chemical weapons for flavor. Blorp made a sound like bubbles popping. Of course you do. Why would you not? At the front of the amphitheater, Professor Krelvan was reorganizing his entire presentation, muttering to himself about revised lethality indexes and the need to contact the Galactic Council immediately. The other students were pulling up information about Earth on their data pads, their reactions ranging from fascination to outright horror. And Riley Jackson, human Deathworlder and apparently the ambassador for the scariest planet in the galaxy, just smiled and waited for class to continue. Because this was going to be a very interesting semester. 3 days after what the Academy students were now calling the Earth incident, Professor Krelvan had managed to pull himself together enough to continue the xenobiology course. Sort of. He had requested that Riley submit a formal presentation about Earth biology for academic review. Partially because the Galactic Council was now very interested, and partially because he needed to sit down while someone else talked about the nightmare planet. Riley stood at the center of the amphitheater again, this time with a holographic display of her own. The assembled students looked noticeably more nervous than they had 3 days ago. Several had chosen seats significantly farther from the human than before. All right everyone, Riley began cheerfully, completely ignoring the palpable tension in the room. Professor Krelvan asked me to do a deep dive into human biology and Earth ecology. I promise to keep it educational and only moderately terrifying. Squee made a sound like a deflating balloon. This did not inspire confidence. Let us start with something basic. Human physiology. Riley pulled up a holographic human skeleton. Half the class recoiled. Yeah, we have internal skeletons made of calcium phosphate, About 206 bones depending on age and how you count them. They are surprisingly hard to break, but also they do break, which is inconvenient. What happens when they break? Asked a Vorgian student, named Tech, who possessed an exoskeleton and found the concept of internal bones deeply disturbing. We heal them. Takes about 6 to 8 weeks usually. The bone literally rebuilds itself, often comes back stronger than before. Krelvan, monitoring from his elevated desk, made a note. Self-repairing skeletal structure. Remarkable. Oh, that is nothing, Riley continued. Our largest organ is our skin, which completely replaces itself every few weeks. We shed millions of dead skin cells daily. We also regenerate our liver. You can remove up to 75% of a human liver, and it will grow back within months. The crystalline student, who had introduced itself as Prism, shimmered with what might have been disbelief. Your species has regenerative capabilities rivaling the Hydronians, who are literally made of regenerative fluid. We also heal from cuts, bruises, burns and most injuries automatically. Our bodies form scab tissue, then scar tissue, then often the scar fades entirely. We have an entire system dedicated to fighting off microscopic invaders, called an immune system. It remembers every disease it encounters and builds defenses. We basically have a military force inside our bodies at all times. Riley switched the display to show a microscopic view of white blood cells attacking bacteria. Several students made distressed noises. Those are white blood cells. They hunt down and destroy pathogens. Some of them literally eat the invaders. We have about 7,000 to 25,000 of these per microliter of blood. They patrol constantly. Your body is conducting warfare against microscopic organisms continuously. Blorp gurgled, sounding impressed and horrified simultaneously. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, has been since we were born, will continue until we die. Most of the time we do not even notice unless we get sick, which means the invaders are winning temporarily. Then our immune system escalates, and we get fevers. Krelvan looked up sharply. Fevers? We raise our internal body temperature to literally cook the pathogens to death. Normal human temperature is about 37 degrees Celsius. During a fever we can hit 40 or higher. We are basically overclocking our metabolism to create an environment hostile to invaders. You weaponize your own body temperature, Prism stated flatly. Yeah, it sucks for us too, but it works. We also have this fun thing called inflammation, where we increase blood flow to injured areas. Makes them swell up and hurt, but it speeds healing. Riley switched displays again, this time showing the human circulatory system. Speaking of blood, we have about 5 to 6 liters of it pumping through roughly 96,000 kilometers of blood vessels. Our heart beats about 100,000 times per day, pumping all that blood through our entire body roughly once per minute. Tech raised a claw hesitantly. What happens if you lose blood? Depends on how much. Lose a little, we get dizzy and weak, but usually fine. Lose too much, we die. But here is where it gets interesting. Our bone marrow constantly produces new blood cells. We replace our entire blood supply approximately every 4 months. We can also donate blood to other humans and receive blood from them, assuming compatible types. You can share blood between individuals? Krelvan was taking notes frantically now. Yep, we figured that out a few hundred years ago. Saved countless lives. We also figured out organ transplants. Hearts, lungs, kidneys, livers, even faces. If someone's parts fail, we can often replace them with parts from donors. The room had gone very quiet again. This was apparently more disturbing than the Deathworld information. Moving on, Riley said, sensing the mood. Let us talk about human senses. We have 5 primary senses, but honestly we have way more than that if you count proprioception, thermoception, nociception, and equilibrioception. Those are words that sound made up, Squee ventured. Body position awareness, temperature sensing, pain detection, and balance, Riley translated. But focusing on the main 5, vision. We have binocular, forward-facing eyes that provide depth perception. We see in 3 channels of color. Our visual range is not the best in Earth's animal kingdom, but it is pretty solid. She pulled up a comparison chart. We can see detail at significant distances. Our pattern recognition is exceptional. We can detect motion extremely well, which makes sense because we evolved as both hunters and prey. You were prey? Tech sounded shocked. Oh yeah, for a long time. Big cats loved eating early humans. So did various other predators. We were not always at the top of the food chain. We climbed there through teamwork and tool use and sheer stubbornness. Riley switched displays. Hearing, we detect frequencies from about 20 Hz to 20,000 Hz. Not the widest range, but adequate. We can determine direction of sounds pretty accurately. Useful for avoiding things that want to eat you in the dark. Smell, we have about 400 different olfactory receptors, not as good as some Earth species, but still functional. We can detect spoiled food, dangerous chemicals, and we use scent for social bonding and memory formation. Taste, we detect 5 basic categories: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. This helped us identify safe foods versus poisonous ones. Although, she grinned, humans being humans, we then found ways to safely prepare and eat many things that are technically poisonous because they tasted good. Of course you did, Blorp muttered. And touch. We have receptors throughout our skin that detect pressure, temperature, texture, and pain. Pain is important. It tells us when something is damaging our body. Although humans have wildly different pain tolerances, some can walk on hot coals or lie on beds of nails, others pass out from stubbing a toe. We are inconsistent like that. Prism shimmered thoughtfully. You mentioned humans evolved as hunters. Elaborate on this. Riley's smile turned slightly predatory again. Oh, you will love this. Humans are endurance predators. I mentioned before that we sweat for cooling. This is a huge advantage. Most predators on Earth hunt in short bursts because they overheat quickly. Humans can run for hours, literally hours without stopping. She pulled up footage of a human marathon. This is a recreational activity where humans run 42 kilometers for fun. The current record is just over 2 hours, but humans have run ultramarathons, covering over 100 miles. We just keep going. Why? Squeeze squeaked. Because we can, Riley shrugged. Our ancestors would track prey animals, following them relentlessly. The animal would run, stop to rest and cool down, then see the human still coming and run again. Eventually the prey would collapse from exhaustion. We call it persistence hunting. We are not fast, but we are inevitable. Krelvin made a sound like air escaping from a pressure valve. That is horrifying. That is survival. Riley corrected, but it gets better. Humans are also ambush predators and pack hunters. We coordinate attacks. We use tools and weapons. We trap prey. We use fire to flush animals toward waiting hunters. We domesticated wolves into dogs specifically to help us hunt more effectively. She switched the display to show various human hunting tools throughout history. Spears, bows, atlatls, nets, traps, and eventually guns. We kept innovating because we kept needing to eat and Earth kept throwing bigger, meaner, more dangerous prey at us. Tech studied the display. Some of these weapons seem designed to kill from significant distances. Absolutely, humans are really good at throwing things. Like weirdly good. Our shoulder joints and hand-eye coordination evolved specifically for throwing. We can launch projectiles with accuracy and force that most Earth species cannot match. A trained human can throw a rock hard enough to crack skulls or bring down prey from 30 meters away. And the bows? Prism asked. A human archer can hit targets from over 100 meters. We figured out complex physics and engineering thousands of years ago just to make better hunting tools. Then we turned those same tools into weapons of war because, well, humans also fight each other sometimes. The room shifted uncomfortably. Yeah, that is the less fun part, Riley admitted. Humans have engaged in warfare throughout most of our history. We are really good at organized violence. We developed strategy, tactics, formations, siege equipment, and eventually weapons that can level cities. But here is the important context. We also developed diplomacy, treaties, laws and ethics specifically because we recognized that constant warfare was not sustainable. She pulled up images of Earth throughout history. We built civilizations, vast, complex societies with art, science, philosophy and culture. We created music that can make you weep. We wrote stories that last millennia. We painted, sculpted, built monuments that still stand thousands of years later. We reached for the stars not because we wanted to conquer them, but because we wanted to explore them. Riley's voice softened. Yeah, we come from a brutal planet. Yeah, we evolved as hunters and survivors, but we also evolved as dreamers and builders. We looked at the cosmos and wondered what else was out there. We built telescopes and spacecraft. We sent probes beyond our solar system carrying messages of peace and samples of our music, because we hoped someone might find them and want to be friends. The amphitheater was silent, but it was a different kind of silence now, contemplative rather than terrified. The reason I am telling you all this, Riley continued, is not to scare you, it is to help you understand. Humans are complicated. We are capable of both incredible violence and incredible kindness. We have empathy that extends not just to our own species but to others as well. We rescue animals. We cry at sad stories. We form bonds with beings that are nothing like us. Block gurgled softly. You said you domesticated predators as pets. We did. And we love them. Humans form intense emotional attachments to our companion animals. We grieve when they die. There are humans who risk their lives to save animals they do not even know. We have entire organizations dedicated to protecting endangered species and preserving habitats. But you also eat animals, Tech pointed out. We do, Riley agreed. We are omnivores. We eat both plants and meat. But more and more humans are choosing not to eat meat for ethical reasons. We debate these things. We think about the consequences of our actions. We try to be better. Grelvan descended from his elevated position, approaching Riley carefully. You paint a complex picture of your species, dangerous yet empathetic, violent yet creative. How do we reconcile these contradictions? Riley met his gaze steadily. You accept that sentient beings are complicated, that we contain multitudes, that coming from a death world does not make us monsters. It makes us survivors who learn to value life because we have seen how easily it can be lost. She looked around at all the assembled students. Every species here has its own survival story, its own evolutionary pressures, its own fears and hopes. Humans are just one more thread in this incredible tapestry of galactic life. We are different, sure, maybe scary sometimes, but we are also curious and enthusiastic and desperate to learn from all of you. I have a question, Prism said suddenly. What do humans want from joining the Galactic Council? Riley smiled. Same thing everyone wants. Connection, knowledge, a place to belong. We have been alone in our corner of space for our entire existence. Now we have found out we are not alone, that there are thousands of species out there, each with their own cultures and histories and perspectives. How could we not want to be part of that? Even though you could probably dominate through force? Krelvan asked carefully. Especially because we could, Riley replied. Strength without restraint is just destruction. We learned that lesson the hard way throughout our history. Power is not the goal. Understanding is, partnership is. Building something together that is greater than any of us could build alone. She gestured to the holographic Earth still rotating slowly above them. This planet made us tough. It made us adaptable. It made us resilient. But it also made us appreciate beauty and value cooperation. Because on a world where everything is trying to kill you, the only way to survive is together. The amphitheater remained quiet for a long moment. Then Blork began making a sound like water percolating through gravel. It took Riley a moment to recognize it as applause. Slowly, others joined in, each species expressing appreciation in their own way. Clicking, humming, flashing lights, vibrating carapaces. Krelvan's eye stalks drooped in what Riley was learning to recognize as a smile. Well then, I believe we have much to learn from each other. Though I will be requiring hazard pay for teaching a class with a human in it. Riley laughed. That is probably fair. As the class dispersed, several students approached Riley cautiously. They had questions about Earth, about humans, about whether certain things were really true. Riley answered each one patiently, watching as fear gradually transformed into curiosity. Scree approached last, tentacles trembling slightly. Is it true that humans keep spiders as pets? Some do, Riley confirmed. Tarantulas mostly. They are actually pretty docile if you treat them right. Scree made a sound like a balloon deflating slowly. Your species is insane. Yeah, Riley agreed cheerfully. But we are your friendly neighborhood insane Deathworlders, and we bring snacks to share. She pulled out a container from her bag. I brought cookies. They are basically sugar, flour and chocolate chips. Completely safe for most species, according to the medical database. Anyone want to try human food? There was a moment of hesitation. Then Blorp oozed forward. I will try one, for science. Others followed. Soon Riley was surrounded by alien students trying cookies for the first time, their reactions ranging from delighted to confused, to requesting seconds. Professor Krelvan watched from his desk, updating his lesson plans and contemplating the future. The galaxy had just gotten a lot more interesting, and possibly more dangerous, but also, if he was being honest, more hopeful. Because if humans could survive Earth and still maintain their capacity for kindness and wonder, then perhaps there was hope for all of them. He pulled up the Earth file one more time, looking at the lethality index that still read 11.2, a planet that should not have produced sentient life, a world that broke the established rules of xenobiology. And yet here was Riley Jackson, sharing cookies with aliens and building bridges between species with nothing more than honesty and enthusiasm. Krelvan made a final note in his files. Humans are dangerous, yes. But perhaps the galaxy needs a little danger. Perhaps we have grown too comfortable. Perhaps these Deathworlders from their impossible planet are exactly what the Galactic Council needs to remember that survival is not about being the strongest or the toughest. It is about adaptation, cooperation, and never giving up. He looked up at the students gathering around Riley, different species interacting without fear now, united by curiosity and sugar-based baked goods. Yes, he thought. This semester was going to be very interesting indeed. And somewhere on a pale blue dot orbiting an average star in an unremarkable spiral arm of the galaxy, Earth continued spinning. Its storms raged. Its volcanoes rumbled, its predators hunted, and its microscopic warriors waged endless war. It remained, as always, beautifully, terribly, impossibly alive. A death world that had produced dreamers. A nightmare that had created hope. A planet that had forged a species capable of reaching for the stars while still holding on to their humanity, and the galaxy would never be quite the same.